The Prescription, a tale of justice reclaimed by Samuel Johnson. Introduction. Hello, I'm Samuel Johnson, a Charleston local who's witnessed this city's highs and lows. Today, I'll lead you through every metal detector beep and each heartbeat on the courthouse's marble steps. You won't just see the surface event, you'll feel the emotions, the hidden thoughts, and the secrets behind a judge's confident smile. Get ready. This story will pull you into a whirlwind of justice like nothing you've ever experienced. Part 1. The Incident at Savannah Pharmacy. It all begins on a humid Georgia night, the kind where the air hangs so thick you could almost swim through it. The calendar says September, but summer refuses to relinquish its grip on Savannah. It's 9:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the fluorescent lights of Bartlett's Pharmacy cast a sickly yellow glow across the nearly empty parking lot. Gloria Tate, 58 years old, her scrubs still bearing faint stains from a 12-hour double shift at Memorial Hospital, pulled her 2008 Toyota Camry into the lot. The car settles with a tired creak, matching the exhaustion etched across Gloria's face. 30 years as a critical care nurse has taught her body to carry on when most would collapse, but tonight, even her well-trained resilience is wearing thin. "Just get the prescription and go home," she whispers to herself, massaging the dull ache in her lower back. 10 minutes, tops. What Gloria doesn't know, what she can't possibly know, is that these 10 minutes will set in motion events that will shake the foundations of Savannah's power structures and expose decades of systematic abuse. The butterfly effect, they call it. One small action creating a hurricane elsewhere. Tonight, Gloria Tate is the butterfly, and her wings are about to start beating. Inside Bartlett's Pharmacy, the night shift consists of two people. Jason Reynolds, a 19-year-old pharmacy tech more interested in his phone than his job, and Marianne Keller, the night manager woman whose personal frustrations have, over time, calcified into a brittle wall of resentment toward anyone who interrupts her routine. As Gloria pushes through the automatic doors, a soft chime announces her arrival. Jason barely looks up, thumbs still dancing across his phone screen. Marianne, standing in aisle 3, organizing a display of vitamins, straightens her back almost imperceptibly, her eyes narrowing as they track Gloria's movements. Gloria approaches the pharmacy counter, her nurse's shoes squeaking softly against the polished linoleum. Her movements are measured, deliberate, and the careful conservation of energy that all healthcare workers master over time. She slides her ID, insurance card, and prescription slip across the counter with a tired smile. "Refill for my blood pressure medication," she says. "Should be in the system already." "I've been getting it filled here for years." Jason nods, finally setting his phone down. He takes the cards and prescription, typing information into the computer with the bored efficiency of routine. But then something happens. Frown flickers across his face as he squints at the screen. Hold on a sec," he mumbles, peering closer at the monitor. This is the moment of this tiny hesitation, this microscopic doubt. In another world, in a fairer society, Jason might have simply double-checked the information, found the error, a simple typo, a mismatched date, a glitch in the system, and processed Gloria's prescription without incident. But we don't live in that world. Jason motions to Marianne, who approaches with the quick, stiff steps of someone already prepared to find a problem. She leans over his shoulder, her eyes darting between the screen and Gloria, who stands patiently on the other side of the counter. "There's an issue with the account," Marianne says, her voice carrying that particular tone halfway between suspicion and condescension that Gloria has heard countless times before. The details don't match up. Gloria's body tenses slightly, an almost imperceptible reaction forged from decades of similar interactions. "That can't be right," she says, her voice calm but firm. "I've been filling that prescription here for years." "Can you check again, please?" But Marianne has already made her assessment, already filed Gloria into a category in her mind, already decided what kind of person is standing before her, not based on the 30 years Gloria has spent saving lives, not on her spotless record, not on her character, but on the color of her skin. "I'm going to need you to step aside," Marianne says, her voice dropping to a whisper as she adds something to Jason that Gloria can't quite hear. But she doesn't need to hear it to understand what's happening. She's lived in Savannah her entire life, She knows the script. What Gloria doesn't know is that Marianne is already reaching for the phone under the counter, already calling the police, already reporting a suspicious person attempting to use fraudulent identification to obtain prescription medication. The rest of the customers in the store, a middle-aged white couple browsing cold medicines, a young mother with a toddler in the candy aisle, an elderly man waiting for his own prescription, have begun to notice the tension brewing at the pharmacy counter. The mother grabs her child's hand and moves toward the exit. The elderly man shifts uncomfortably in his seat. The couple pretends not to watch, but their eyes keep darting over. And in the back of the store, by the seasonal items display, a man in his 30s discreetly pulls out his phone and begins recording. "I'd like to speak to the pharmacist on duty," Gloria says, her voice still measured, still professional. Years of dealing with difficult situations in the emergency room have given her the ability to remain composed when every instinct screams to do otherwise. "The pharmacist is busy," Marianne replies curtly. "And I've already called security to assess the situation." What she doesn't say, what she deliberately concealed, is that she hasn't called store security. She's called the police. Gloria stands her ground even as the weight of what's happening settles onto her shoulders. She could leave, part of her wants to, but leaving would feel like admitting guilt, and Gloria Tate has done nothing wrong. So she waits, dignity intact as the minutes drag by like hours. Outside, sirens wail in the distance, growing louder, too loud for a simple prescription discrepancy, too urgent for a misunderstanding at a pharmacy counter. The sound sends a chill through Gloria that has nothing to do with the store's aggressive air conditioning. When officers Rick Coleman and David Miller push through the pharmacy doors at 9:32 p.m., the atmosphere shifts immediately. Coleman, broad-shouldered, crew-cut, 15 years on the force, enters first, his right hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. Miller follows, younger, thinner, only 3 years out of the academy, still learning the unwritten rules from veterans like Coleman. They don't go to Gloria first. They approach Marianne, who rushes forward with an urgency that suggests a far greater crisis than a prescription discrepancy. "That's her," Marianne says, voice lowered but still audible in the quiet store. "She tried to use someone else's insurance. The accounts don't match. I think she might be trying to commit fraud." Coleman barely glances at the computer screen. "Don't ask to see the discrepancy. Doesn't request Gloria's identification." He simply nods at Marianne, then turns toward Gloria, his posture shifting subtly from casual to confrontational. "Ma'am," he says, the word dripping with condescension, "I'm going to need you to step outside with us." Gloria remains composed, though her heart hammers against her ribs. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. I have my ID and insurance card right here. This is a prescription I've been filling for years." Miller shifts his weight uncomfortably, glancing between Coleman and Gloria, but says nothing. He's still new enough to question, but not brave enough to speak up. Coleman's expression hardens. "Ma'am, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, your choice." The man recording from the seasonal display has moved closer, his phone capturing every word, every gesture. Other customers watch in stunned silence. Jason, the young pharmacy tech, stares at his keyboard, unable to meet Gloria's eyes. "I haven't done anything wrong," Gloria says, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "If you just check my ID and she doesn't get to finish." Coleman steps forward, grabbing her wrist with unnecessary force. "That's enough. You're coming outside. Now." The cold metal of handcuffs bites into Gloria's skin as Coleman roughly secures them around her wrists. The humiliation burns hotter than the physical pain of being treated like a criminal in front of strangers, being handled roughly despite her compliance, being judged guilty without a shred of evidence. As they lead her through the store toward the exit, Gloria walks with her head held high, her back straight, her dignity intact despite their efforts to strip it away. She catches the eye of the man recording, gives him the slightest nod of acknowledgement. A silent witness to injustice is better than no witness at all. Outside in the humid night air, Coleman shoves Gloria toward the patrol car with unnecessary roughness. As he pushes her head down to guide her into the back seat, Gloria turns to him, her eyes meeting him directly. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," she says, voice low but clear. Coleman laughs, a short, dismissive sound. "Yeah, I've heard that before," he replies, slamming the door shut. What he doesn't know, what he can't possibly know, is that Gloria Tate isn't just another arrest to be processed and forgotten. She isn't just a statistic to be added to his monthly report. Gloria Tate is the daughter of Walter Tate, former special agent in charge of the FBI's Civil Rights Division, a man whose name still commands respect in federal law enforcement circles. A man who has spent decades building networks and alliances dedicated to exposing exactly the kind of abuse that is unfolding tonight. And as the patrol car pulls away from Bartlett's Pharmacy at 9:41 p.m., Gloria reaches deep into her memory and begins silently reciting the phone number her father made her memorize decades ago, a number to be used only in emergencies. Only when all other options have failed. The storm is coming. Coleman and Miller just don't know it yet. Part 2. The Holding Cell. The Savannah 3rd Precinct building squats like a gray concrete toad on the corner of Abercorn and 37th Street. Built in the 1970s during an era when architectural beauty was sacrificed on the altar of brutal functionality, it remains a physical embodiment of the system it houses, cold, unforgiving, and intentionally intimidating. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzz at a frequency just irritating enough to set teeth on edge. The air smells of industrial disinfectant, stale coffee, and the particular sour note of human desperation. For those who work here, the smell fades into the background over time. For those brought in against their will, it's an assault on the senses, a reminder that they have entered a place designed to break them down. The squad car carrying Gloria Tate pulls into the precinct's rear parking lot at 10:03 p.m. Officer Coleman kills the engine but doesn't immediately move to open the doors. Instead, he turns to Miller, his voice low. "You ever notice how these people always claim it's a mistake?" he says, not bothering to lower his voice enough to prevent Gloria from hearing. Never their fault, always someone else's problem. Miller nods noncommittally, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror where he can see Gloria sitting straight-backed and silent. Something about her composure unsettles him, though he can't quite articulate why. "Let's go," Coleman says, pushing his door open. "Booker, write it up, and we can grab coffee before the end of shift. The routine is mechanical, practiced, and efficient." Coleman yanks open the rear door and motions for Gloria to exit with an impatient flick of his wrist. The handcuffs bite deeper as she maneuvers her tired body out of the car, but she makes no sound of complaint. Miller follows a step behind, already pulling out the paperwork they'll need for processing. Inside, the night desk sergeant Hank Dillard, 23 years on the force, counting down the days to retirement, barely looks up as they enter. His jowly face remains impassive as Coleman announces, "Got a prescription fraud attempt from Bartlett's Pharmacy." Dillard grunts, pushes a form across the desk, and returns to the sports magazine hidden in his lap. No questions asked, no evidence requested. Just another black body being processed through a system designed to chew people up and spit them out. The booking process is deliberate in its humiliation. Gloria's fingerprints press firmly into ink, then rolled onto cards, each finger smudging her identity into the system. The mugshot camera flashes, capturing her face in harsh, unflattering light. Name, age, address, occupation recorded with mechanical indifference. When asked for her phone call, Gloria recites a number from memory. Not her home, not a relative listed in her contacts. A different number altogether. The desk officer dials without interest, holds the phone out to her. Gloria speaks quietly, just 3 sentences. "It's Gloria. I'm at the 3rd Precinct. They're claiming prescription fraud." The voice on the other end says only, "Understood. Don't say anything else. I'm on my way. That's it. No dramatic declarations, no tearful explanations." Just the quiet efficiency of a mechanism being set into a motion mechanism built precisely for moments like this. Coleman, watching from across the room, misinterprets the brevity of the call as fear or resignation. A small, satisfied smirk plays across his lips. Another troublemaker was put in her place. Another point for the thin blue line. What he doesn't realize, what none of them understand yet, is that the brief call Gloria just made has activated a response unlike anything this precinct has ever experienced. Gloria is led to a holding cell in the back of the station, a small concrete box with a metal bench bolted to the wall and a toilet without privacy. The door clangs shut behind her. the sound echoing down the corridor like a period at the end of a sentence. Final. Definitive. She sits on the metal bench, back straight, hands folded in her lap. The red welts, where the handcuffs dug into her wrists, are beginning to darken. Evidence. Her nurse's training automatically catalogs the injury's superficial abrasions. Possible bruising, no permanent damage. Her human heart catalogs a different kind of injury altogether. The clock on the wall outside her cell reads 10:47 p.m. Time moves differently in holding cells, stretching, contracting, playing tricks on the mind. Gloria doesn't watch the clock. Instead, she studies the walls, noting the graffiti scratched into the paint over years, names, dates, pleas for help, crude drawings, and expressions of defiance against a system designed to crush the spirit. Somewhere in the station, a phone rings. Then another. The sound of footsteps past her cell grows more frequent, more urgent. Voices rise and fall, too distant to make out words, but clear enough to detect the changing tone, confusion, concern, then something approaching alarm. At 11:23 p.m., Officer Coleman appears at her cell door, his previous smugness replaced by something less certain. He leans against the bars, trying to project casual authority that no longer quite fits. "So Grandma," he says, "the nickname a deliberate attempt to diminish her wants to tell us the real story now? Might go easier for you." Gloria meets his gaze without flinching. "The real story," she says quietly, "is that you're going to regret tonight." Coleman snorts. "Yeah, threats won't help your case. You got a magic lawyer hiding in your purse or something?" Gloria doesn't respond. She doesn't need to. The answer is already moving through the system, approaching with the inexorable force of justice, delayed but not denied. At 11:41 p.m., the front door of the precinct slams open with enough force to be heard even in the holding cells. The sound is followed by a silence, not the normal bustling silence of a police station at night, but the weighted silence of collective breath being held. Officer Miller appears at the end of the corridor, his face pale. He whispers something urgent to Coleman, who dismisses him with a harsh gesture. But Gloria can see it as the first crack in Coleman's armor, the first hint that the ground beneath his feet isn't as solid as he believed. Footsteps approach measured, deliberate, unhurried. First come two men in dark suits, their expressions impassive, their stances professional. Federal agents, their manner unmistakable to anyone familiar with law enforcement hierarchy. Behind them walks Walter Tate. At 72, Walter Tate remains an imposing figure. 6'2" with broad shoulders and the ramrod straight posture of a man who has never allowed himself to be bent by circumstance. His closely cropped hair has gone silver, but his dark eyes retain the piercing intelligence and unwavering moral clarity that made him legendary within the Bureau. He wears a tailored charcoal suit that speaks of authority without needing to announce it. He doesn't look at the officers. He looks directly at Gloria, and in that moment of eye contact, an entire conversation passes between father and daughter. "Are you hurt? No. Are you ready? Yes. Will you follow my lead? Always." Walter turns his attention to Coleman, who has straightened unconsciously, like a soldier suddenly finding himself face to face with a general. "Who's in charge here?" Walter asks, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute authority. The desk sergeant stumbles forward, suddenly finding his voice. "That would be me, sir." Walter doesn't waste time or words. "Then you'll want to explain to me why a licensed nurse with valid identification and no criminal record is sitting in a holding cell tonight." The sergeant opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. No words emerge. Walter continues, his voice still measured but edged with steel. "You'll want to explain why your officers detained her without verifying a pharmacy error. Why did they ignore clear evidence of her identity? Why did they physically restrain her in public without probable cause?" He takes one step closer, and though he doesn't raise his voice, the temperature in the corridor seems to drop 10 degrees. "And you'll want to explain it very carefully, because as of 10 minutes ago, you're not just dealing with local fallout. You're dealing with a federal civil rights violation, and the Department of Justice is already on the line." Coleman finds his voice, stepping forward with fists clenched. "You can't just walk in here," and Walter turns his head slightly, fixing Coleman with a look that could freeze fire. "I already have." He nods to one of the agents, who produces a set of keys and moves to unlock Gloria's cell. The door swings open with a soft metallic creak. Walter steps forward and offers his hand to Gloria. She rises slowly, every movement measured, every muscle screaming for dignity, and walks out on her own power. As they pass Coleman, Gloria doesn't even glance his way. But she feels his stare burning into her back fury, confusion, and the first stirrings of fear all mingled together as he realizes, too late, that this night isn't going to end the way he expected. Walter and Gloria walk through the station side by side, flanked by the federal agents. Every eye follows their progress. Some in confusion, some in dawning comprehension, some in the particular fear of those who suddenly understand that their actions have consequences. Outside, the humid Georgia night embraces them like an old friend. Gloria takes a deep breath of air, that tastes of freedom and justice just beginning to bloom. "Thank you," she says simply. Walter gives her a sideways glance, a rare softness touching his stern features. "You don't ever have to thank me for protecting you," he says. "That's my job. That's always been my job." His phone buzzes. He checks it, lets out a small grunt of satisfaction. "What is it?" Gloria asks. Walter's eyes gleam in the streetlight. "Background checks," he says simply. Turns out Coleman and Miller have quite a few skeletons rattling around. Excessive force complaints, racial profiling accusations, stuff the department buried. He slips the phone back into his pocket. "Not anymore." Gloria shakes her head, a humorless smile tugging at her lips. "They really thought they could just make me disappear." Walter's face hardens. "They thought you were alone, and that, perhaps, was their greatest mistake of all." Part 3. The storm breaks inside the threered precinct. The atmosphere has transformed from routine indifference to barely contained panic. The federal agents who arrived with Walter Tate haven't left instead. They've spread throughout the station like a quiet invasion force, their presence disrupting the carefully maintained ecosystem of power and silence. In the squadron room, officers gather in small clusters, voices lowered, eyes darting nervously toward the federal agents now examining computer records and requesting files. The night shift commander, Lieutenant Paul Mercer, normally a portrait of unflappable authority, paces back and forth in his office, phone pressed to his ear as he tries to reach the police chief, the department's legal counsel, anyone who might tell him how to navigate this sudden catastrophe. Officer Coleman stands in a corner, arms crossed tightly over his chest, jaw working furiously as he watches the federal agents moving through the precinct with the casual confidence of people who know exactly what they're looking for. His face has cycled through anger, disbelief, and now settles into a sickly pallor as the full implications of the night's events begin to dawn on him. Officer Miller sits at his desk, head in his hands, the realization of his complicity crashing down around him like a collapsing building. 3 years on the force, following the lead of veterans like Coleman, never questioning the unwritten rules that govern their conduct, never imagining that those rules would suddenly, violently change overnight. At 12:17 a.m., more federal agents arrive via a coordinated team of specialists in digital forensics, civil rights violations, and police misconduct investigations. They carry heavy black equipment cases, laptops, and document boxes. This isn't an impromptu visit. This is a carefully orchestrated operation, planned and executed with military precision. One agenta, sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense demeanor approaches the desk sergeant with a tablet in hand. "We need access to all body cam footage from tonight," she says. "Every second, no edits, no gaps." The sergeant hesitates, years of departmental loyalty warring with the reality unfolding before him. "Now," she adds, her tone making it clear that cooperation is not optional. As the sergeant fumbles with login credentials, Coleman steps forward, desperation making him reckless. "You can't just seize our footage without a warrant," he barks. The agent doesn't even look at him. "You waived that right the second you initiated an arrest without probable cause. Congratulations." Across the room, another agent plugs a small device into the station's main server, bypassing security protocols with authorized federal access codes. Within minutes, files begin transferring not just tonight's footage, but weeks, months of recorded interactions, internal communications, arrest records. The female agent pulls up the body cam footage from tonight's arrest on her tablet. The silent video plays with damning clarity, Gloria calmly presenting her identification, Gloria explains herself. Gloria not resisting, not fighting, not doing anything to warrant handcuffs or arrest. And Coleman sneering, mocking, manhandling her without provocation. This, the agent says simply, turning the tablet to face the room, is what happens when you think no one's watching. Gloria's voice emerges from the tablet speakers, calm and steady despite the circumstances. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. The agent's smile is thin, without humor. Turns out, she says, she was right. Outside the precinct, word has spread rapidly. Social media ignites with video from the pharmacy, uploaded by the bystander who captured the initial arrest. Community activists, long familiar with the 3rd Precinct's reputation, mobilize with remarkable speed. By 1:00 a.m., a small crowd had gathered outside the station, not violent, not threatening, but present and watching, their very existence a statement of solidarity and vigilance. News vans begin to arrive, reporters setting up equipment, preparing for morning broadcasts that will carry this story far beyond Savannah. This isn't just a local incident anymore. It's becoming a symbol, a rallying point, a spark that might just ignite something larger. At 1:42 a.m., Walter Tate returns to the precinct. This time, he's accompanied by 2 high-ranking Department of Justice officials whose presence transforms this from a personal intervention into an official federal action. The atmosphere in the station shifts again, fear crystallizing into certainty as officers realize this isn't going to blow over with the morning light. Walter moves to the center of the room, his presence filling the space with calm, lethal energy. When he speaks, his voice carries without effort, reaching every corner of the suddenly silent station. My name is Walter Tate, retired Special Agent in Charge, FBI, current consultant for the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, he says, though half the room already knows. And as of 30 minutes ago, this police station is under federal review for multiple violations of constitutional and civil rights. One of the DOJ officials steps forward, pulling out official documents from his briefcase. Effective immediately, he announces, Officers Rick Coleman and David Miller are suspended pending investigation into civil rights violations, wrongful arrest, and misconduct. Coleman's face darkens, fury and fear battling for dominance. For a moment, it seems he might refuse, might fight back against the inevitable, but the weight of federal authority presses down like a physical force. Slowly, reluctantly, he unzips his badge and slams it down on the desk. His service weapon follows with a harsh metallic clatter. Miller moves like a man walking to his execution, his badge and weapon surrendered with shaking hands. Walter watches them with expressionless calm. This is just the beginning, he says. There will be depositions. There will be grand jury hearings. And when we're done, if the evidence supports it, he pauses, letting the weight of the moment settle like a stone on everyone's chest. There will be federal charges. He looks directly at Coleman now, stripping him bare with his gaze. You thought you could humiliate my daughter. You thought you could silence her. You thought you could shove her into a system designed to chew her up and spit her out. Walter takes a step closer, his voice dropping even lower, more dangerous. You didn't just attack my family, he says. You attacked every single person who's ever been told they don't belong to every person who's ever been treated like a criminal just for daring to exist. Coleman swallows hard, his bravado slipping away like a cheap coat in a storm. And now, Walter finishes, you're going to find out what it feels like to answer for it. The DOJ officials escort Coleman and Miller away, not in cuffs, not yet, but with a quiet finality that suggests handcuffs aren't far behind. When they're gone, Walter turns to the desk sergeant. You'll cooperate fully with this investigation, he says. You'll turn over every piece of footage, every incident report, every disciplinary file. No redactions, no disappearing paperwork. The sergeant nods mutely. Walter gives him one last look, almost pitying. You might want to call a lawyer, he says. You're going to need one. Part 4. The Reckoning. The sun rises over Savannah on a day unlike any the city has seen in decades. The morning light reveals a changed landscape, not physically, but in the invisible architecture of power that has governed the city for generations. By 7:00 a.m., every major news outlet in Georgia had picked up the story. By noon, it's national. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all running the body cam footage, the pharmacy video, the images of Walter Tate walking his daughter out of the precinct with the quiet dignity of righteous fury. The story resonates because it touches a nerve exposed by years of similar incidents across the country. A black woman wrongfully arrested, a system designed to protect itself rather than serve justice. But this time, the ending is different. This time, the system itself is being forced to bend. In a commandeered conference room 3 blocks from the 3rd precinct, the Department of Justice has established a temporary operations center. Agents work around the clock, poring over files, analyzing body cam footage, cross-referencing incident reports that suddenly look very different under fresh scrutiny. Gloria sits quietly in a corner of the room, watching it all unfold. Walter confers with the lead investigators, his decades of experience providing context and direction for the younger agents. Every so often, he glances over at Gloria, silent check-in, an unspoken "Are you okay?" She responds with the smallest nod. She is tired, bone-deep tired, but she isn't backing down. The investigation expands rapidly, moving far beyond Gloria's specific case. The deeper the agents dig, the uglier the picture becomes. 15 excessive force complaints against Coleman and Miller, 7 allegations of racial profiling, 3 internal affairs investigations, none properly closed, all swept under the rug. Emails surface messages between supervisors joking about shaking down troublemakers and keeping the streets clean the old-fashioned way. Text exchanges between Coleman and Miller bragging about rough arrests. Evidence of tampering with body cam footage, chain of custody violations, cases where evidence mysteriously disappeared or witness statements were altered. One video clip makes Gloria's stomach twist. A black teenager, no more than 16, pinned face first against the hood of a patrol car, crying as Coleman barks insults at him. No crime, no justification, just rage and cruelty with a badge. Another clip, Miller laughing while shoving a Latina woman into the back of a squad car for talking back during a routine traffic stop. She hadn't been cited for anything, she had just asked why they pulled her over. Special Agent Ramirez, the lead DOJ investigator, turns to Gloria, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "We have enough to recommend criminal charges. Not just misconduct, not just civil suits." She ticks them off on her fingers. Obstruction of justice, falsifying police reports, tampering with evidence, deprivation of rights under color of law. She pauses, and that's just the beginning. Outside the operations center, Savannah begins to awaken to the full implications of what's happening. Community activists, long ignored by city officials, suddenly find themselves with an unprecedented platform. People who had filed complaints against the 3rd precinct over the years, complaints that disappeared into administrative black holes, began coming forward, their stories adding weight and context to the investigation. By mid-afternoon, the mayor of Savannah calls a hastily arranged press conference. He stands behind the podium, pale and stiff, flanked by the interim police chief, the previous chief having been placed on administrative leave after a pointed call from the Attorney General's office. The press room is packed wall to wall with local reporters, national correspondents, community leaders, all crammed into a space designed for half their number. Walter and Gloria sit in the front row surrounded by federal agents who flank them like sentinels. The mayor clears his throat, his voice unsteady. Today, we are announcing sweeping changes in response to the findings uncovered by the Department of Justice's investigation. He glanced nervously at the federal agents before continuing. We acknowledge that systemic issues within our police department have led to violations of civil rights, abuses of authority, and a failure to protect the very citizens we are sworn to serve. Cameras flash continuously, reporters scribbling notes with frantic energy. Effective immediately, Officers Rick Coleman and David Miller have been terminated from the Savannah Police Department, the mayor continues. Furthermore, criminal charges are being filed against both individuals, including obstruction of justice, falsifying police reports, unlawful arrest, and civil rights violations under federal law. A murmur runs through the press corps, but the mayor isn't finished. We are also beginning the process of a full independent review of all past complaints filed against the department over the last 10 years. A federal monitor will be assigned to oversee all activities moving forward. He takes a deep breath, clearly reaching the part of the statement he dreaded most. and we offer our public apology to Ms. Gloria Tate. All eyes turn to her. We recognize that Ms. Tate was wrongfully detained, humiliated, and mistreated. Her dignity was stripped away by individuals who abused their power. For that, we are deeply sorry. The words hang in the air, thin and brittle, as if even the mayor knows how little they weigh against what has been done. Gloria doesn't move, don't blink, doesn't make it easier for them. The interim police chief steps forward, adding her own piece to the growing pile of apologies. We are committed to rebuilding the trust we have broken, she says, her voice stronger than the mayor's. We will implement mandatory racial bias training, overhaul our internal review processes, and open channels for community oversight. More promises, more plans. Gloria listens carefully, filing every word away, because promises are easy to make when the cameras are rolling. The real test will come when the lights fade and the world moves on. Questions fly from the press corps. When did the department first know about the complaints against officers Coleman and Miller? How deep does the corruption go? Will higher-ups be held accountable? Ms. Tate, how do you feel right now? Gloria rises slowly. The room quiets immediately, every eye focused on her. She doesn't walk to the podium, she doesn't need to. She speaks from where she stands, her voice calm and steady. I didn't survive what happened to me last night just so I could hear empty apologies, she says. I'm here because people like me have been ignored, dismissed, and destroyed for far too long. A ripple moves through the reporters. Gloria continues, her voice gaining strength. I am not special. I'm not unique. I'm just the one who had someone powerful enough to answer my call. But there are hundreds of thousands of others who don't, who never get their names in the paper, who never get justice. Her gaze sweeps the room, sharp and unwavering. I accept your apology, she says, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. But I will not accept anything less than real, lasting change. She turns without another word and walks out, leaving the politicians and officials scrambling behind her. Walter follows, silent and proud. Outside, the crowd parts as Gloria emerges into the sunlight. Reporters shout questions. Protesters chant her name. Strangers reach out just to touch her shoulder, as if her strength might somehow rub off on them. At the edge of the crowd, Gloria stops and turns, taking it all in: the people, the cameras, the raw electric feeling hanging in the air. It is bigger than her now, bigger than anything she had imagined when she sat in that cold cell, hands cuffed and head pounding. This is a movement, and it is just getting started. Walter leans in, his voice low enough that only she can hear. You changed something today. Gloria smiles a small, tired smile full of sadness and hope all at once. Maybe, she says, but not enough. Walter chuckles softly. It's a start. And it is a strata, messy, imperfect start. But for the first time in a long time, it feels like the world might actually be tilting a little closer toward justice. And Gloria Tate, nurse, survivor, fighter, stands at the center of it all, exactly where she was meant to be. Part 5. The Aftermath and the Beginning. The weeks that follow move faster than anyone in Savannah is prepared for. What begins as a single incidental wrongful arrest, a father's intervention transforms into something much larger, something with momentum and purpose that sweeps through the city like a cleansing fire. It starts quietly. Community leaders meeting in small rooms, civil rights lawyers exchanging long, serious phone calls. Emails pass between people who normally don't trust each other but suddenly realize they have the same bruises, the same anger smoldering inside. Then it grows. One former victim comes forward, then another, and another man, women, teenagers, senior citizens. All with stories, some old, some recent, all cut from the same cloth of humiliation, brutality, and enforced silence. Gloria attends the first community meeting almost by accident. Walter had gotten a call from an old colleague, a civil rights attorney named Marcus Dean, asking if they would come listen. Not to speak, just to listen, and so they do. They sit in the back of a rented church hall, the metal chairs cold and uncomfortable, and listen as person after person stands up to tell their story. A young black man wrongfully arrested for matching a description while jogging. A Latina mother forced out of her car at gunpoint during a broken taillight stop. An elderly man beaten during a late-night welfare check that turned violent without cause. The stories pour out raw and unfiltered, and Gloria feels something settle deep in her chest, a heavy, aching fury that has nothing to do with her own experience and everything to do with the system that allowed all of this to happen. Walter sits beside her, stone-faced, arms folded tight across his chest, but she can see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers tap a silent rhythm against his bicep. He's taking it all in, every word, every injustice. When Marcus Dean finally stands up at the front of the room, the crowd falls quiet. He doesn't yell, doesn't shout, just speaks plainly. "We have an opportunity here," he says. "We have evidence, we have witnesses, and most importantly, we have momentum." He pauses, letting that sink in. "We can file a class action lawsuit against the city, the police department, and every officer implicated. We can drag every ugly truth into the light where it belongs." The room buzzes with low, anxious murmurs. Some people look scared, some skeptical. A few nod, eyes burning with resolve. Marcus's gaze finds Gloria in the back. "But we can't do it without someone willing to stand at the front," he says. "Someone the public already knows, someone they believe in." Gloria feels every head in the room turn toward her. The weight of it hits hard, sudden, and undeniable. For a moment, she wants to shrink away, to let someone else carry the load this time. But then she thinks about that metal bench in the holding cell, about the cuffs cutting into her wrists, about the cold look in Officer Coleman's eyes, about the trembling hands of the teenager pinned against the car, the silent sobs of the woman shoved into the back seat, the haunted faces filling this room. She stands up slowly. The room goes dead silent. "I'll do it," she says, her voice steady. And with those three words, something shifts in the Savannah tipping point reached, a path forward illuminated. The lawsuit moves faster than anyone expected. Within a month, the legal team files official paperwork, dozens of plaintiffs listed, hundreds of pages of documented abuses, and a clear demand: accountability, reparations, and federal oversight. The city tries to fight back at first. They hire expensive lawyers. They issue carefully worded statements denying systemic problems. They throw around words like isolated incidents and miscommunications, but it's too late. The evidence is overwhelming, the public pressure relentless, and the national media attention makes it impossible to sweep anything under the rug. One by one, cracks appear in the city's defenses. First comes the resignation of the police chief quietly in the dead of night, with no press conference, no farewell parade. Then the suspension of half a dozen senior officers tied to the buried complaints. And finally, inevitably, the mayor himself announces he won't seek re-election, citing health reasons no one believes for a second. But it doesn't stop with Savannah. Other cities start reaching out to community organizers, civil rights groups, even whistleblowers inside other departments. They want advice, they want help, they want to know how Savannah did it. Because what started as one arrest, one injustice, has become a blueprint, a roadmap for dismantling corruption from the inside out. 6 months later, on a cool autumn evening, Gloria sits with Walter on the back porch of her modest little house. The crickets chirp in the soft Georgia air. The sky is painted deep purple and gold, the last scraps of sunlight fading over the horizon. She sips her sweet tea slowly, letting the quiet settle over them. "Did you ever think we'd see something like this?" she asks. Walter chuckles, the sound low in his throat. "Not in my lifetime," he admits. "Hell, not even in my dreams some days." They sit for a while longer, watching the stars emerge one by one. "It's not over, is it?" Gloria finally says. Walter shakes his head slowly. "No," he says, "it never is. There will always be another fight, another battle." He looks at her, his eyes fierce and proud. "But you made them see, you made them care." Gloria smiles, a real one this time. Tired, yes, but full of something deeper, something stronger. Hope, not the blind, naive kind, the hard-earned kind that only grows after you've fought through the worst and come out the other side, still standing. Inside the house, her phone buzzes with another message. Another reporter wanted an interview. Another civil rights leader asked her to speak at a rally. Gloria lets it buzz. For tonight, she just wants to sit here under the stars with her father at her side. She will pick up the fight again tomorrow, because now she understands something she hadn't known before. The real power isn't in one lawsuit. It isn't even in bringing down corrupt officers or exposing a broken system. The real power is in refusing to be silent, in standing up, in being seen. And no matter how many battles lie ahead, Gloria Tate is ready. Because once you start telling the truth, you don't go back. Conclusion. The Federal Courthouse. The Federal Courthouse in Savannah stands as an imposing monument to justice, to all marble columns and grand steps, a physical embodiment of America's highest ideals. If not always, its reality. On this bright spring morning, the building hums with anticipation, the air thick with the particular tension that accompanies moments of historical significance. Inside, Courtroom 3 is packed to capacity. Journalists fill the press section, their pens poised over notebooks, their eyes alert for every detail. Community members occupy the public benches, some wearing t-shirts emblazoned with slogans of solidarity and justice. Federal agents stand at strategic points throughout the room, their presence both a comfort and a reminder of the gravity of these proceedings. At the defense table, Rick Coleman and David Miller sit in rumpled suits that hang awkwardly on frames that have grown thinner over the months of investigation, depositions, and pretrial hearings. Their attorneys flank them, whispering last-minute advice that both men seem past hearing. The swagger is gone now, the arrogance washed away by the inexorable tide of evidence and accountability. Gloria sits in the front row of the gallery, Walter beside her, Marcus Dean on her other side. She wears a simple navy blue dress, professional, dignified, a silent statement that she belongs in this room as much as anyone else. Her hands rest calmly in her lap, though only Walter notices the slight tremor in her fingers, the physical manifestation of emotions kept tightly in check. The courtroom rises as Judge Eleanor Mitchell enters a black woman in her 60s, appointed to the federal bench 15 years ago, known for her meticulous attention to detail and her unwavering commitment to the law. She surveys the packed courtroom with calm authority before taking her seat and instructing everyone else to be seated. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" she asks. The forewoman stands, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a serious expression. "We have, Your Honor." Judge Mitchell nods. "Please hand the verdict form to my clerk." The paper makes its journey from jury box to clerk to judge. Judge Mitchell examines it briefly, her expression revealing nothing. She hands it back to the clerk, who returns it to the forewoman. The defendants will rise and face the jury, Judge Mitchell instructs. Coleman and Miller stand slowly, their attorneys rising beside them. Coleman stares straight ahead, his jaw clenched tight. Miller's eyes dart nervously around the room, as if searching for an escape that doesn't exist. Ms. Forewoman, Judge Mitchell says, "Please read the verdict." The forewoman unfolds the paper, clears her throat. "On the count of obstruction of justice, we find the defendants guilty." A soft murmur ripples through the courtroom. Gloria remains perfectly still. "On the count of falsifying police reports, we find the defendants guilty." Coleman's shoulders sag almost imperceptibly. "On the count of unlawful arrest and deprivation of civil rights, we find the defendants guilty." Miller closes his eyes, his face pale. The litany continues, count after count, charge after charge. A methodical dismantling of the shield that had protected these men for so many years. When the forewoman finishes, silence falls over the courtroom, heavy with the weight of justice finally, belatedly served. Judge Mitchell thanks the jury for their service, then turns her attention to the defendants. Sentencing will be scheduled for 4 weeks from today. Until then, the defendants will remain released on bail with continued electronic monitoring. Her gaze hardens slightly. However, let me be clear, the court takes these violations extremely seriously. When those entrusted to uphold the law break it instead, they don't just harm individual victims, they damage the very foundation of trust upon which our justice system depends. She adjourns court with a single strike of her gavel. As people begin to rise, to whisper, to reach for phones and notepads, Gloria remains seated for a moment longer. She feels Walter's hand cover hers, a gentle squeeze of support and pride. "It's done," he says quietly. Gloria shakes her head slightly. "No," she replies, "it's just beginning, because this verdict, significant as it is, represents only a first step." The class action lawsuit against the city continues. The Department of Justice investigation has expanded to other precincts, other departments. The community organizing that began in that rented church hall has grown into a sustained movement for police accountability and reform. As Gloria finally rises and makes her way out of the courtroom, people reach out to touch her arm, to offer congratulations, to express solidarity. She acknowledges them with quiet dignity but doesn't stop to speak. The cameras wait outside, the microphones and the shouted questions, but today she has nothing more to say. The verdict speaks for itself. On the courthouse steps, she pauses, looking out over the city of Savannah spread before her historic buildings, the moss-draped trees, the flowing river in the distance. This is her home, flawed and beautiful, with a history both inspiring and shameful. And today, that history has shifted just slightly in the direction of justice. Walter joins her, standing at her side as he has throughout this ordeal. "Where to now?" he asks. Gloria takes a deep breath of spring air, feeling the weight of the past months begin to lift from her shoulders. "Home," she says simply. "Just home." They descend the courthouse steps together, moving past the clamoring press with polite but firm refusals to comment. Their car waits at the curb, a modest sedan that will carry them away from this momentous day and back to the ordinary world of grocery shopping and bill paying and tomorrow's sunrise. As they drive through the streets of Savannah, Gloria watches the city pass by her window. Children play in parks, people walk dogs and push strollers. Life continues, as it always does. But something has changed, not just in the police department or the city government, but in the invisible connections between people, in the shared understanding that justice, while imperfect and often delayed, is still possible. Gloria Tate didn't set out to become a symbol or a catalyst for change. She simply refused to accept being treated as less than human, refused to be silenced, refused to let injustice pass unchallenged. In doing so, she reminded an entire community of their own power to demand better, to speak up, to stand firm in the face of systems designed to grind them down. As the car turns onto her street, Gloria feels a profound exhaustion settle into her bones, not the crushing fatigue of defeat, but the earned weariness of a battle well fought. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new struggles in the ongoing work of building a more just society. But tonight, she will shower away the courtroom's tension, eat a simple dinner on her back porch, and watch the stars appear one by one in the Georgia sky. And in that quiet moment, she will allow herself to feel what has been too dangerous to acknowledge until now: pride. Not just in the verdict or the changes it represents, but in herself, in her courage, her resilience, her unwavering dignity in the face of those who sought to strip it away. Because Gloria Tate has learned the most powerful lesson of all, that justice isn't something bestowed from above. It's something demanded, fought for, and sometimes when courage meets opportunity and truth overcomes fear, it's something won. A final word. When we look back at Gloria's story, it's easy to see it as a personal victory, but it's so much bigger than that. It's a reminder that injustice can live anywhere, sometimes hidden right under our noses, and that it takes courage, persistence, and the willingness to stand tall, even when everything feels stacked against you, to change it. This isn't just about one arrest. It's about every moment someone was treated like they didn't belong. Every time a voice was silenced. Every injustice that was swept under the rug because no one thought they could make a difference. Gloria's fight shows us that standing up matters no matter how hard it gets, no matter how long it takes. And it's a lesson we can all carry into our own lives, whether it's speaking up for a neighbor, fighting for what's right in our communities, or teaching the next generation that dignity and respect are not negotiable. Because together, when we choose not to look away, when we stand up instead of standing by, we are stronger than we ever could be alone.